In today's video, I'm going to share with you my two-stage process for doing some food prep and planning so that you have a little more ease if you're worrying about how you might manage if you get ill in this dreadful period we're going through. Welcome back to Grown Frugal, or if you've not been here before, on this channel I share tips and ideas on how to live a simpler, happier and lower cost life by growing food and cooking healthily from scratch. And I started this work because I've had two serious illnesses in my life, and that's made me very aware of the need for me to kind of build skills and learn things that will help me live more frugally but still eat good food and beautiful, delicious food without spending a fortune. And that's what this channel's been all about. But in this time of coronavirus, some of the work I'm doing has just brought in some really unexpected benefits, and I find myself really grateful for being in such a lucky position now, in that I've still got food growing in the garden, I've got bulk buys upstairs, the cupboards are full, and I have enough food to share with others. So today I wanted to kind of help any of you out there who are a bit like me. Maybe you're the one who manages the household, or you're the one who does the cooking, and maybe at the moment you've got that kind of nagging fear at the back of your head. What if I get this virus? What if I'm struck down? What if I'm exhausted and can't go cooking from scratch? And when we're ill, of course, it's the most important time to eat as healthily as we can. So I wanted to share with you how I've gone about dealing with this, sort of stumbling my way through. I think we're on day 21 or something of lockdown here. And we've been locked down here for longer than that, because I started isolating early because of caring responsibilities for my elderly mum. So if you are out there a little bit worried, but you're also still in a position to be able to get in some food, or you have stacks in the cupboards like I do, let's think about this in two stages, because if we let our wish to be perfect get in the way, it might just freeze you. You might get nothing done at all. So stage one is about an imperfect food plan, but a food plan that will feed you and any of your family that are with you during a time of illness. And that will free you up so you can then work on stage two. So here's some ideas for stage one. So firstly, if you are unwell, you're unlikely to be able to manage getting out to the shops. You may not be able to manage deliveries. There may be shortages. So what we want to do is to have a sense that we have enough things in the house so that whenever illness strikes or some other circumstance, that we are covered. So draw yourself up a plan of days for, say, 2 weeks, and then look at how you can fill in some meals using some shelf-stable foods. So here's a few of the foods from my just-in-case pantry plan. I have in things like oatmeal. I have some oat milk drinks in that last for a long time, and also buying in some canned soups or stews. So a little tip, maybe think about getting in some canned foods that you might have enjoyed when you were younger or when you were a child. Something that maybe is a guilty pleasure now, because when you're ill, your appetite might be impaired. So anything that will get you to eat something, even if it's imperfect, and for me, this is tomato soup, and I still now when I'm ill, I want to have some tomato soup. It reminds me of my childhood. Very imperfect, but it is food and it will give me some nourishment, and any nourishment is better than eating nothing when you're unwell. Other things I make sure that I have in, I know now that every week we have a delivery of eggs with our veggie box, so I always know I'll have eggs in, so they are in the food plan. And I also like to have things in that are kind of snacky, so I may not want something, a whole meal when I'm ill. And if you're thinking now about this, thinking about getting some snacks in that also give you a little bit of nutrition, so they're lovely and they're moreish and you will eat them when you're ill. It may be some nuts that you like, or it may be a kind of healthy crisp bread. This one's got seeds and bits of cheese in it. So just trying to find a range of foods. You don't have to have something different every day. Usually when we're ill, we can get quite repetitive and the joy of eating might not be there. So it's more about just making sure you get something comforting, warm, and with some nutrition in during those times. And then the second part of stage 1, if you're lucky enough to have a freezer, is to really use that freezer and to buy in some foods that can sit in the freezer now, and they're ready meals, so that you know that if you've got no energy, you can just drop it in the microwave or heat it up in the oven without any effort, and get some that are relatively healthy enough, something that you like, but you also feel, oh well, this is not too bad. It's not like getting the worst of ready meals. So stock up your freezer with ready meals or ready soups or things that you know you might eat. And then also in the freezer, get in some green foods, some peas, some frozen spinach, frozen herbs. Put a few of those in the freezer too. So if you are having your canned soup or a ready meal and you want to spice it up a bit or give it a bit of extra health, you can drop in a block of that spinach. You can add a few peas to it to give you some protein. So just thinking creatively, how could I use my freezer to up the nutrients in these sort of basic pantry foods that I've got, and also maybe give myself a little lift that there's something lovely and fresh. And then for a lot of us, bread and milk and butter, stuff like that can be real staple foods that we might crave when we're unwell and are easily accessible. And things like bread and butter and cheese, they can all be frozen. So you can dedicate a little drawer in your freezer space and have some basic stuff in there. You almost put crime scene tape across it so it's not touched, to break in case of emergency, and so that you've got a little stock in there that you know is always there. And then finally for stage 1, if you are able to get hold of some seeds, or you've got some little seeds left over from last year, why not fill a little tray with soil and sow now some little microgreens. So you can sow some lettuce or cress or mustards or rocket, all kinds of things. Just sow them quite thickly in a thin layer of soil, get them on a windowsill, and very soon you'll have some microgreens that are packed with nutrients. And I'd love a bit of that actually on my canned tomato soup. And also, if you like growing, just having that little cheery greens kind of gradually growing up on the windowsill, you'll be very pleased with that if you are lying there feeling fragile. So this first stage then is about preparing an imperfect food plan, writing it down, making sure you have enough for about 2 weeks. If you're feeling okay and you end up having lots of time to make a more perfect food plan, that's fine. But in the meantime, you're covered, and that will give you a sense of ease. So stage 2, and this is for everyone who has a freezer, is to do some batch cooking and get some healthy homemade foods into your freezer so that you have some wonderful nutritious meals just waiting for you. And again, super important that they don't need a lot of prep. So the kind of foods that are frozen where you know you can just drop them into the microwave or into the oven or into the blender, something very, very simple. So if you're feeling really exhausted, there's no kind of barrier there. It's just very quick and you can get on with it. So here's some ideas. For soups, cook them down into a kind of concentrated format and then freeze them into little pucks. So using muffin trays or ice cube trays, freeze your soups in a quite intense form where you've boiled out a lot of the liquid, and this means they'll take up far less room in the freezer, but also will give you some flexibility. So if you're really not feeling like eating but you can just manage a little bit of food, you can water down one of these pucks so it's quite a kind of thin broth and you're more likely to eat it that way. Or at times when you really feel ravenous and you're ready to really eat something, take 2 of the pucks, heat them up, have them as a thick soup, add some bread, so that you've really got some flexibility from your soups and from any stews that you make. And then as you do stage 2 of the plan, really focusing on the notion that when we're very ill, appetite might be disrupted. Now, when I had a head injury some years ago, I actually lost my sense of taste and smell altogether, and this is called anosmia, and it really affects appetite. And this symptom is actually occurring in a lot of people with coronavirus. So firstly, understand that from what we can see so far at least, it seems that people do recover, so there is hope. But also that we can still find ways to sort of stimulate the appetite, stimulate the palate, and this is all the things that I had to learn after my head injury. Because I knew I needed to eat really healthy food, but actually it's quite hard to do that sometimes. So here's some ideas for some appetite stimulators if that happens. So one of the things I've created as part of my food prep for this is a quite complex ramen broth, and I followed the instructions from Alex, the French guy cook. Sorry Alex, I can't remember your YouTube name, but I will link it below. I followed his method for doing this with the ingredients that I had anyway. And what I've done is I've frozen very small portions of this wonderful broth into some really small ice cubes, as well as some kind of larger ice cubes. And again, the idea of this is that it has a lot of umami in it, so a lot of flavours that come from things like soy and enhanced by things like kelp, I think that's right. It's quite a geeky thing, ramen, so I don't know much about it, but I do know that it has all those kind of balanced flavours that help with appetite. So I've created a ramen broth, so I know that I could just pour some water on it and drink it as a kind of nutritious soup or a drink, or if I'm able to eat more, I can throw in a few vegetables. If I'm able to eat more, I can drop in some instant ramen noodles. And then if I'm really getting my appetite back, I can add in some eggs. So it's the kind of dish that you can really adapt and sort of swing about with and put in all kinds of ingredients to kind of stimulate the appetite. And something else that's quite similar to this is Rebecca Katz's Magic Mineral Broth. Again, it's a superbly balanced broth that you can use as a base or as a drink. And I'll link to her website below so that you can see that. And that one is vegetarian. And then another thing you can do is to freeze up some flavour makers. So to do your prep now, and if you've got some lemons or limes or stem ginger or chilies, to kind of do the prep on those now and to just lay those out and get them frozen and then keep them in the freezer so that you have some flavour makers that you can add to foods or broths or just even taste on its own. And one of the things I found when I had severe anosmia was that I could still feel that sting, that heat of chili. So I really got to like spicy foods at that time because I could get something from them when everything else was flat. Another thing you can do for the freezer is to make up some ingredient bags of healthy, nutritious smoothies. So in advance, make yourself or get in some nice yogurt, which you can freeze again as little pucks. You get the idea. I love these little pucks, frozen pucks, to make life easier. Get that in a bag with some fresh fruit, some bananas, some berries. Bag them all up so that all you have to do if you are ill is to drop one of these things in the blender, add some water and ice cubes, and off you go. And if you have some nuts in, especially things like cashews, which blend down quite easily, have some nuts at the ready to throw in for extra protein. And hopefully we all get through this without needing any of this food prep that we've done, and I will be delighted if that happens for me. But I feel happier knowing I'm prepared. And now all there is to do is go and watch my paprika app video if you'd like to get this into an electronic form that you can update as you go and share with your family and friends so they can help you if needed. Be well everyone and take care.